Hi guys, welcome to a video, and in today's video we're going to be discussing the clues and theories in episode 8 of Agatha All Along. Usually I put my general thoughts on the episode at the beginning of these videos, but I have actually made a separate video giving my general thoughts on not only episode 8 but episode 9 as well, which is why they're not here. If you want to hear those thoughts, I will put a link to the video somewhere on the screen here. Mysterious. But now let's dive into episode 8. So the episode opens with Alice being greeted and taken away by death, and scattered around her body we can see book pages. Now interestingly, books symbolize life beyond life, since they are a physical record of past thoughts, stories and memories that live on after the author has passed. And all of this not only fits in with the theme of Agatha's trial, which is centered around spirits, ghosts and the past being present, it fits with Alice's death because, as we can see, she is continuing on in another form after she has physically passed away. I also like how books being a record of the past connects to the record aspect of Alice's past, with her mother using the cover of the Ballad of the Witch's Road as a protection spell for her. The contents of these pages read to me as though they are from a children's book, and if this is correct, it also connects all of the themes we've discussed about life beyond life and records of the past to Nicholas Scratch, who was Agatha's child, and this creates a further layer for their inclusion in Agatha's trial. Next we have Rio confronting Agatha about Billy and the fact that he's stolen a second life. Again, this theme of life beyond life connects back to the book pages the episode opens on, and this scene is significant because it's about how once again Rio is in a position where she has to take a boy living on borrowed time away from Agatha, which brings up all of the resentment that Agatha holds about Rio taking Nikki away from her all those years ago, and puts her on the defensive. This inner grief and heartbreak being brought up in Agatha is also visually reinforced in this scene by the three branches positioned behind her, which connects back to the Three of Swords tarot card. Interestingly, the line Rio says to Agatha, "This walk with another woman's son on a road that doesn't," gets cut off, and it sounds as though Rio was about to say doesn't exist or something similar to that. And there are multiple ways to interpret this line. We know the myth of the road was originally created by Agatha and inspired by Nikki, who is heavily implied to be Rio's son too. And so Rio seeing Agatha repeat this journey with a boy who belongs to another woman could be hurtful or elicit feelings of jealousy in Rio, since it feels as though Nikki, and by extension her, are being replaced. There's also the suggestion that Rio and Agatha have always been aware that the road is Billy's fantasy manifestation, which at this point in the episode is a revelation to the audience. And so this line can also be interpreted as Rio calling out Agatha's refusal to accept reality in Nikki's death, by instead living out this pretense of having a son back in her life through Billy in this make-believe world, especially since Agatha's inability to accept death sits at the core of their issues. Rio's line, "No one in history has had special treatment like you," is most likely referring to Rio prolonging Nikki's life when she was supposed to take him away, although Jack has suggested in interviews that Agatha may have taken advantage of Rio's powers in other ways for her own gain. But since this is not portrayed on screen, we'll just ignore that and focus on what's actually in the show. But from this exchange, it appears Agatha is too steeped in her grief to be able to appreciate what Rio has given her, and instead frames it as though all that Rio has ever done is take from her instead. And Rio's response to this is, "That's usually your move, right?" And here she is referring to Agatha's succubus or siphoning powers. And this exchange is interesting because it highlights and creates a parallel between them of the dark natures of their powers, and also their inability to find closure or resolution, because Agatha is unable to reconcile with death. However, the difference between the two of them in relation to their darker powers is that Death is a neutral character and her actions are tied to the natural order rather than self-interest, whereas Agatha makes purposeful evil decisions for her own selfish gain, which creates quite a contrast between their characters. But I will add here that we don't actually know what led Agatha down this path of mass murder in the first place. There's only implications that it's related to her upbringing, the the betrayal of her coven, and her power-hungry nature. And because her backstory is still somewhat of a mystery, it does obscure her characterization somewhat. Agatha also tells Rio that she lets people believe she traded Nikki for the Darkhold because the truth is too awful. And this line doesn't really make sense when you consider the truth is that she asked Death to give her more time with her son. But Jack has explained that Agatha has guilt over not being able to save Nikki and also over involving him in her mass murder schemes. So from that perspective, I can see why Agatha may feel the truth is much worse than the rumour that she traded him in. But again, we are solely working off of implications and interpretations, which does obscure certain things. I mean, the Darkhold is a huge aspect of Agatha's story, which we still don't know much about at all, but never mind, I guess. Another notable line in this scene is where Agatha cuts a deal with Rio, where in return for Billy's life, she asks that Rio leave her alone and that she never see her face again. And this serves as one explanation as to why Rio loses her Aubrey Plaza form when Agatha dies later on in the episode. As Rio is leaving the road, she rips through the fabric of it with her dagger, and this is symbolic of the fabric of reality, as well as revealing the road to be a fabricated reality. Jack has also shared that it serves as a nod to WonderVision. She says, "It was meant to sort of have the WonderVision feels, like the jump cut moment, like Vision's head being crushed in, like all of our weird sort of step out moments. The beekeeper, because we had such a short period of time where we were ready to hint at the twist that Billy had made the road. And so it was in that same episode that we were like, we'll do this sick moment." Other nods to WonderVision in this episode are when we see Agatha being tied up to the garden fixture in the yard fight, which mirrors the way she was tied up at the stake during her Salem trial. When Billy tells Agatha, "I don't know how I did it," in reference to giving himself a second life, it connects back to WonderVision when Wanda also says, "I don't know how I did it," in reference to creating the hex. And when Billy leaves Agatha's house and puts up his hood, it mirrors when Wanda put her hood up and walked through Westview after taking down the hex. The fabric ripping scene also has a layered connection to Greek mythology. Rio Vidal in Spanish means river life, which is related to the river Styx, who is a river and goddess in Greek mythology that separates the world of the living from the underworld. And so Rio being the one to rip through the road and expose it as a place separate from the real world, especially with the road being under the world, so to speak, is relevant here. Rio's character also relates to the Greek myth of the three fates, who represent the ultimate control over the life cycle. And the three fates are also connected to the road and Billy's creation of it, since they weave the tapestry of existence and intertwine material creation with the interconnection of life and death. When Rio later attacks Agatha's heel in the yard fight, this also relates to the Greek myth of Achilles, who was held by his heel and dipped in the river Styx by his mother in an attempt to make him immortal. The one part of his body left untouched by the waters, his heel, becomes his only point of weakness, hence the phrase Achilles' heel. So this connection reveals an ongoing layered theme of Greek mythology throughout this episode too. Agatha, Billy and Jen discover that the Witch's Road is a full circle, and this is reflective of Agatha's story in relation to the road, which starts with her creating its myth whilst travelling with Nikki, who is owed to death, and ends with her travelling with Billy, who made that myth a reality and is also owed to death. And from beginning to end, Agatha is trying to save each boy from death's clutches. Episode 8 also comes full circle as it opens and closes on the theme of life after life. It opens with the book pages, which symbolise a continuation of a story after death, and it ends with the revelation that Agatha is a ghost, and that her story is also going to continue after her death too. Jen explains to Billy in a conversation about Rio that the green craft is about the cycle of all living things, growth and decay, which not only ties into the wider themes of growth and decay in the episode, but also explicitly connects Rio's character to life and growth as well as death and decay. And this is interesting because it's yet another clue which reinforces Rio's potential to create new life, which further connects her to Nikki. Interestingly, Jen also has a line about how Agatha and Rio likely first met over dead bodies, and Jack has said that this idea was actually discussed in the writing writer's room and is part of their decided backstory off-page. She said, "We talked about it a lot. We talked about what is their meet cute. Over corpses, I imagine. That was from our ideation process. We never wrote it on the page, but we broke it out in the room of them seeing each other over bodies, and that would grow." And this explains where Jen's line originated from. The last trial is also very rich in character clues and connections. It's not explicitly stated who the trial is for, but Jack has confirmed that it is an Earth trial, which implies it's connected to Rio if anyone, and the body bags and grow lights also reinforce this notion. Although Rio is not technically a part of the coven, so I guess it's still up for debate somewhat. The theme of the trial is growth, and in order to complete the trial, the coven has to grow something. Someone pointed out in the comment section on my last video that Billy is given dirt in his spell book, Jen is given water in her necklace, and Agatha is given a seed in her locket in order to achieve this. But since Billy is too distracted and emotional, he throws the book away. This theme of growth connects to not only the trial itself, but to the character's personal growth too. Jen shows character growth through her newfound selflessness and wanting to save Agatha and Billy, before learning that Agatha is the one who bound her. This results in Jen unbinding herself, taking her power back, and blooming once more, leaving the road as a changed person. The connection between personal growth and selflessness can also be seen in Agatha, who allows or helps Billy and Jen to get out of the trial before herself, and later goes on to sacrifice herself after Billy offers to do the same. And this development of the more selfish or morally questionable characters, ending their stories with selfless choices and gestures of goodness, connects back to the line where all that's bad is good in the Ballad of the Witch's Road. Agatha also says the line, "There's no place like home," after realising the last trial is in her basement, which connects back to Dorothy saying the same line in The Wizard of Oz as she's transported back to Kansas. And of course there's the added parallel of the shoes being used to get there. Another one for the Wizard of Oz references bank. Another notable moment in the trial is that when Agatha gestures for Billy to sit down, she does so in the exact same manner as Rio did to her in episode 5, which creates a cute parallel between the two of them. Agatha guiding Billy until he puts Tommy in a freshly dead vessel again connects back to the life after life theme threaded throughout the episode. However, my question is, was Tommy inside of Billy all along, or did he just locate Tommy floating around somewhere? It's implied that the former is the case because Agatha keeps telling Billy that he can't keep Tommy, but maybe I misunderstood that. Let me know your thoughts about this in the comments. After Billy has left the trial, Agatha responds to his question about if he killed a boy to bring Tommy back with, "No, Billy, sometimes boys die." And this line can be interpreted as Agatha coming to terms with the inevitability of death and her acceptance of Nikki passing on, which is reinforced visually through the shot of the locket with Nikki's theme song playing in the background. And this again indicates character growth. As Agatha is contemplating Nikki's death, a dandelion seed appears in her locket and she says the words, "Out of death, life," which not only connects back to Billy and Tommy finding new life out of death, but to Nikki, since it's heavily implied that Rio is the one who gave Nikki to Agatha. We first see the visual association between a dandelion and Rio in episode 1 when Rio arrives at Agatha's house after the unbinding, and then it appears again in this episode after Agatha holds the seed to her tear and plants it in the ground to create new life. Which, as a side note, there is a parallel here between Agatha planting the seed by herself and begging for more time to allow it to grow, and with Agatha growing Nikki by herself and begging for more time with him. And in both cases, it's a miracle that they grow at all before they are essentially killed. And finally, we also see a dandelion being held by Nikki in episode 9. So the dandelion first appearing next to Rio, then being planted and grown by Agatha, and finally being held by Nikki tells a story in itself and reinforces the connection between the three of them. Interestingly, dandelions are able to reproduce asexually through a process called apomixis, which allows them to produce viable seeds without fertilization, and the resulting seeds produce clones of the parent plant. So the seed in the locket is also potentially a clue that Rio was the one who gave Agatha the seed in order for her to create Nikki. When Agatha is greeted by Rio on the other side of the road, we can see that Rio is holding a flower. Now, I wasn't able to identify this flower. It's possible it's not a real flower or it's a hybrid of flowers, but it does look to me as though it has pronounced or lengthy stamen, which is the pollen producing part of a flower. And I'm sure most of you already know this, but pollen is a powder of microscopic grains that plants release to reproduce. So if this is correct, then the flower is a further clue that Rio has the potential to create life with someone and was involved in Nikki's creation. However, I could be wrong about this since I can't identify the flower and that may not actually be stamen. Flowers have a lot going on. So if anybody has any thoughts or recognizes this flower, please let me know down in the comments section. During Agatha and Rio's fight, there are references to the Lost Coven members. Firstly, the moon is in the fire phase, and Agatha tries to create a protection circle which connects to Alice. Next is the hit the deck moment, which was divined by Lilia and saves Agatha's life in that moment. And then there's the healing incantation, which connects back to Jen. And there are various interpretations of this sequence being included in the fight, but I feel as though it was to show that Agatha needed the coven or benefited from what the coven had given to her in that moment. Interestingly, in the fight scene, Wiccan arrives all grown up, and he blasts Agatha to help her get her powers back. And it's here that it's revealed that Agatha can in fact control her siphoning, which removes the tragic, misunderstood element of her character and reframes her as a much more nefarious one. It's also been pointed out that in this moment, Rio using wind to knock Billy off his feet is reminiscent of the moment that he gets thrown through the sound booth in episode 4, which creates a theory that that moment was Rio's doing as well. And it's a plausible theory because Rio tells Agatha that she's been watching her and monitoring her relationship to Billy, so she may well have thrown Billy through the sound booth to test Agatha's reaction. However, I'm 50-50 on this theory because whilst I can see the logic, the way the scene is filmed makes it seem as though it is the curse who throws him through the sound booth and not Rio. But let me know your thoughts on this down in the comments. Interestingly, the yard fight scene connects back to the tarot readings in episode 7, which predicted Rio being the obstacle that would precede a literal windfall and end in a sacrifice that would lead to destruction. Please see my breakdown of episode 7 for more details on that reading. In this scene, Agatha tells Rio to plant a few azaleas on your way out, which not only directly connects to Rio growing azaleas on Agatha's grave when she's on her way out, but also connects right back to WonderVision, where Agnes claimed Sparky the dog had died by eating leaves from her azalea bush. It also connects to Sharon, who in episode 2 has a line about the secrets to fluffy azaleas as well. And this will sound unhinged because it is confirmed in the show that Sharon is dead. But I took this as yet another clue that Sharon was really Rio all along. I mean, first of all, Sharon was conveniently there on the scene to stop Billy from getting away from Agatha. Her costumes have consistently had a floral theme. Rio is known to take on different forms. Agatha appeared to be talking to Sharon's corpse like she knew her. And yes, I know that the show related this to her being in on the fact that Billy created the road, but still. And Rio also came up through Sharon's grave. And on top of all of that, we now have the line about the azaleas. It makes sense. I told you all I will die on this hill. Another point of interest in this episode is the kiss between Agatha and Rio, because this is the first time that Agatha has been able to siphon power from someone without being attacked. And Jack has said that they changed up the way that Agatha is able to absorb powers specifically for this scene. She said, "We've never seen Agatha take power in that way, and I would point that I wouldn't really call it progress as much as I would call it kind of an evolution." So we don't get any explanation for this evolution or how Agatha is aware of this evolution, which translates to. A wizard did it. But in any case, this moment connects back to Agatha and Rio's conversation in episode 1, where Rio offers that Agatha take her powers, and Agatha responds with "that's cute, but you know it would kill me." And this not only reframes this moment as foreshadowing, but as another full circle moment in the show too. Agatha's grave is another point of interest as a lot of the flowers are purple, which is both her own colour and a colour associated with lesbianism due to its connections to Sappho and lesbian history. But there are also white, pink and orange colours on the grave too, which all together make up the colours of the lesbian pride flag, and this symbolises Agatha and Rio's lesbian love. Gay. The flowers and plant life on the grave, from what I can tell, are dandelions, which we've already discussed the meaning of, daisies, which are associated with death. For example, the phrase "pushing daisies" means to be dead and buried. And interestingly, they can also symbolise a girl's first love, which I thought was a beautiful touch. Roses, which famously symbolise romance and love. Forget-me-nots, which symbolise true love, faithfulness and remembrance. This one is particularly touching because it's Rio saying that the thought of Agatha is always going to stay with her. Dahlias, or at least what looks to me to be dahlias, which symbolise personal growth, spiritual awakening, divine guidance and protection, which is relevant to Agatha's journey as a mentor going forward. And finally mushrooms, which are not only associated with witchcraft, but with the supernatural, the afterlife and with death in general, since they feast on dead matter and decay. Mushrooms also spiritually symbolise rebirth, growth and transformation, all themes which are relevant to Agatha in this episode too. Back in Billy's home, as he's entering his bedroom, we see woodland-themed prints featuring mushrooms on the walls, as well as a mushroom ornament inside his room. And as discussed, mushrooms symbolise rebirth, growth and enlightenment. Rebirth connects to Billy's soul entering a new body, growth connects to the theme of this episode, and enlightenment connects to the revelation of Billy's powers and his creation of the road. Again, as discussed, mushrooms are also associated with death and represent the intersection between life and death. And this connects to Billy since he is essentially feeding off of a dead body and therefore embodies this intersection too. There are countless clues connecting back to the road in Billy's bedroom, some of which I don't believe we've seen before due to his room only previously being shot from certain angles. And looking back now at episode 6, there were some really obvious clues in Billy's room that I missed out on the first time around, including the leaves. I know. We see the Poltergeist 2 poster and Ouija board connecting back to Agatha's trial in episode 5, the sound timer connecting to Lilia's trial, and the Jennifer's body poster with the line "she's got a taste for the bad boys," connecting back to Agatha's line about liking the bad boys in episode 7. The bronzed shoes, which connects back to Agatha asking Billy if he's going to have the Lost Coven members' shoes bronzed earlier on in the episode, and the Moon Tarot card, which signifies illusion and deception and your imagination taking over, all of which is very relevant to the road. And the episode ends with the revelation that Agatha is now a ghost. Well, we don't physically, perhaps that's not a good word to use, see this transformation until the next episode, but still, we know that she's a ghost and we hear the word boo, and this connects back to Rio's own boo in episode 4, which looking back now is such a clever clue that completely went over my head at the time. And I should have known better because nothing in this script is by accident. And Agatha being a ghost also connects back to Rio's line about hating ghosts in episode 5. And it can be presumed that Rio's hatred of ghosts is because she isn't able to ferry them across to the other side due to emotion and unfinished business tying them to the mortal plane. This could be the case for Agatha, however, it's also possible that Agatha became a ghost due to the deal that she made with Rio where she asked not to see her in death. And as a result, Rio was not there to ferry her across to the other side, and so Agatha became a ghost instead. Interestingly, in episode 1, the butterfly visuals in the Agatha and Rio fight scene also symbolise that Agatha is going to undergo a physical transformation related to her relationship with Rio. And all of this reveals that the ghost theme was somewhat consistent consistently threaded into the show, even from as early as episode 1, which is pretty cool. So overall, this episode was incredibly rich in clues and theories, and I would love to know any extra details you spotted or your own theories about this episode down in the comments section below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys on the other side. Ooh.